made a good president, no one can tell. Defeat of the Indians at Tippecanoe had made me a hero. The voices of my supporters echoed Tippecanoe and Tyler too, when Tyler and I ran for office. But unknown to all, it was Tyler America elected. Pneumonia brought my death but a month after I became president.
Now will you please...
Saving the Union was my only aim. A house divided against itself cannot stand. But in April 1861, the South opened fire on Fort Sumter and the war was upon us. In 1862, I signed the Emancipation Proclamation as a symbol of our resolve to cleanse the nation of the hated institution of slavery. There were many defeats during the first bitter years of the war. Then came the agonizing struggle here on the green hills and valleys of Gettysburg that turned the tide of battle. Long months of agonizing struggle followed until Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, 1865. The South needed the help of our nation. I sought, with malice toward none, with charity for all, to finish the work we were in. I came here to Gettysburg to dedicate a final resting place for the men who gave their lives on this battlefield. I prayed that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, would have a new birth of freedom, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Still the heart of Abraham Lincoln in Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C.
America, to me, was good. Great lives never go out, they go on. And America's had many great men. In a way, families in America live on as well, to give their best in great places and small. My great-grandfather was the signer of the Declaration of Independence, and my grandfather had been the 9th president. My father was a member of Congress, and I had the honor to serve as my abilities allowed.
The next president was...
My friends, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. However, war clouds had gathered. I warned our people that the epidemic of world lawlessness was spreading. America could not escape through isolation. Britain was already embroiled with Hitler's legions. As the warplanes battled, we granted all aid short of war. The democratic way of life was being assailed in every part of the world. Our generation had a rendezvous with destiny. I proclaimed the 4 freedoms as a goal for all free people throughout the world. Then came the day of infamy, December 7th, 1941. Remember Pearl Harbor! Japan struck, and we were at war. At first, we were pushed back on every front. Then, the slow, steady advances began. Franklin D. Roosevelt did not live to know the outcome. Eisenhower. The name has a fine ring to it. But what's in the name? In this case, quite a lot. Ike was an honor graduate of West Point, became a five-star general and supreme Allied commander. He was respected in every area of the military. Dwight David Eisenhower, President of the United States, respected across party lines. Dwight David Eisenhower, gentleman farmer. What did this great man stand for? Here are a few words from his second inaugural speech that capture the tenor of his thinking. May we pursue the right without self-righteousness. May we know unity without conformity. May we grow in strength without pride in self. May we, in our dealings with all peoples of the earth, ever speak truth and serve justice. And so shall America, in the sight of all men of goodwill, prove true to the honorable purposes that bind and rule us as a people in all this time of trial through which we pass.
The pace of the 1960s quickened as the electorate chose youthful dynamism in John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the youngest president in American history.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Communism was again threatening our way of life by escalating the Cold War. A few miles off our shore, nuclear weapons were being aimed at our cities, and the USSR Premier Khrushchev was saber-rattling in other parts of the world. Kennedy's courageous stand caused him to back down from Cuba, thus effecting the first significant Russian retreat of the Cold War. At home, JFK aggressively pursued the space program, and in 1962, John Glenn orbited the Earth. He championed civil rights legislation and introduced the Alliance for Progress and the Peace Corps.
Dallas, Texas, November 22nd, 1963. A tragic moment in American history. President Kennedy was cut down by the bullets of an assassin.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is time to reawaken this industrial giant, to get government back within its means, and to lighten our punitive tax burden. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever.
With those words still echoing across the world, Reagan pressed for human freedom, demanding that the Berlin Wall come down and that the Soviet Union stop interfering in the affairs of other nations. At home, he attacked big government by freezing federal hiring and cutting government spending, but he was unable to effect a balanced budget. On March 30th, 1981, President Reagan was shot and wounded in an assassination attempt in Washington, D.C. The Reagan Revolution continued during his ensuing four-year term, and his policies concerning world communism continued during the administration of his Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush.
2008, as America faced rising unemployment and its worst financial crisis since the 1930s, Barack Obama was elected our 44th president. Drawing on his unique diversity and championing of the bipartisan theme of hope and change, the 47-year-old senator from Illinois became the first African-American to assume office. President Obama's historic inauguration, attended by nearly 2 million people and watched by millions around the world, celebrated the theme, A New Birth of Freedom, commemorating the 200th anniversary of Abraham. His message called America to rise to the hard tasks ahead by working together, just as George Washington and our founding fathers had.
America has carried on not simply because of the skill or vision of those in high office, but because we, the people, have remained faithful to the ideals of our forebears and true to our founding documents. Our challenges may be new. The instruments with which we meet them may be new. But those values upon which our success depends, honesty and hard work, courage and fair play, tolerance and curiosity, loyalty and patriotism, these things are old. These things are true. They have been the quiet force of progress throughout our history. What is demanded then is a return to these truths. What is required of us now is a new era of responsibility, a recognition on the part of every American that we have duties to ourselves, our nation, and the world, duties that we do not grudgingly accept, but rather seize gladly, firm in the knowledge that there is nothing so satisfying to the spirit, so defining of our character, than giving our all to a difficult task. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
You have just witnessed a review of America with the men who were America, men who as presidents represented us to ourselves and to the world, men whose faults were our faults, whose genius was our genius, whose hopes were our hopes, men whose lives set the course for presidents to come.